Hey, my name is Brent here on Cloudy with a Chance of Meeples. Welcome to Ideas. Welcome to some fresh new ideas. A time where we sit down with either publisher or illustrator or designer in the board game hobby and talk about how they got their ideas from just being ideas to the games that fill our Calyx shelves endlessly. And today we have a designer as well as a publisher, which we'll get to momentarily, but we have a designer of one of my favorite games from 2024, the designer of Flip 7. We have Eric Olsen joining us. How's it going, Eric?
Oh, awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Well, thanks so much for taking the time. Um, it's been cold where I'm at. Are you in you're in the States, right?
Yeah, I'm in the States. I'm in Idaho. I'm in southern Idaho, but even southern Idaho puts you pretty far north.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that being said, we're still like a low of teens and 20s. And a little north of me, where my daughter is right now, they're down in the single digits. So pretty cold, you know?
Yeah, well, we are in Fahrenheit. We do Celsius up here.
Mm.
I'm minus 21, which is minus 6 Fahrenheit. And it's been like this last week has been insane because um I'm trying to count back. On Friday we had a blizzard, and so they canceled school, and we had like reports of like 50 car pileups.
Mm.
And then on Monday the temperature dropped, and we were in the minus 45 range with the wind chill. So they canceled school. And so my kids were happy because they got an extra long weekend because on one
That's a long
extreme,
one.
yeah, and it was crazy because on the Friday it wasn't that cold. It was just like they were like 70-mile-an-hour winds. Like it was insane. And then on Monday it was not as windy, but like deathly cold. And so, but
You know, where I grew up in upstate New York, back before internet times, we would turn on the radio in the morning,
mhm,
and because we get these huge,
mhm,
16, 18, 24 inches of snow overnight, and
yep.
you would just turn on the radio and listen to all the school cancellations because the buses couldn't get through, right?
Mhm,
And in Idaho, where I live in Boise, Idaho, we simply don't get that much snow. One
mhm.
year since I've been here for 13 years, one year, it snowed a lot, and the students missed about a week of school, and
Wow.
people still call it Snowmageddon. I mean,
Wow.
they still remember, but typically our students only miss school, unfortunately, because the air quality,
Mm,
because of the forest fires
yeah.
the last few years. We have a lot of forest fires in Idaho. We also have a lot of smoke blowing in from, California and other states. And sometimes the air quality gets so bad they cancel the sports. And sometimes, once in a while, it gets so bad they actually cancel school.
Hmm.
Usually they just cancel the sports, though.
Hmm. And you know what? With all these cancellations, I've had a chance to play games, and that's what we're going to talk about. And I just actually played on the other side, Nun Attack Temple of Ice, and it was so fitting that it's so cold outside, and we're building this little pyramid and whatnot. But let's talk about gaming. Um, Designer of Flip 7, among others, who we'll get to, but you didn't start there. I'm assuming, like, what's your backstory? I always call it a backstory. But like, what did gaming look like for you growing up?
Sure. I mean, most of us, I mean, my backstory is probably similar to a lot of people that are in the game space at all, or just avid game players, right?
Hmm.
Just grew up playing games, playing Clue and playing Monopoly and playing Parcheesi, and then
Mm,
later on playing some Risk and some chess and some Stratego, and just playing games. I also love card games. Everything from hearts or spades to bridge. I mean, all the games to
mm,
poker. Games are games. I love games. Um, and then when I got married, we had a little bachelor party. It wasn't anything too crazy.
hmm.
And my best friend said, "Well, that was fun. We should do that more often." So
Hmm.
every year since then, we've been getting together, and we just call it Bacchus, which is where bachelor comes from, I
Okay.
believe. So
Okay.
we call it Bacchus, and we get together, and it's pretty nerdy. We get together And we have a long weekend of playing games. As a matter of fact, I've got my voice back a little bit, but this past weekend, this 3-day weekend, was a Bacchus weekend. So I was in Denver. It was pretty cold.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
and we just played games all weekend long. We got in a lot of games, and it was fantastic. We played a couple of my games. We played a million of lots of other games. I see King of Tokyo behind you. That's a go-to for us. We always
Hmm.
throw in a couple of those. And game design was not ever anything that was planned. So I just, or my first game was Glyphics. It's like Pictionary with pieces,
Hmm.
and that came up very organically around the kitchen table during COVID, that first summer of COVID.
Hmm.
And it was my first idea for a game, really, that I think I've ever had, and it was a lot of little steps that led up to being where I am right now. And I don't want to take your whole 30 minutes getting into it. It's kind of a cool story, but
No,
I'm
do
relatively.
share because I love hearing how people find their way
Mm,
into game design because um like some people are just naturally just creative. I would say I'm not necessarily like that. Like like for example, if I'm playing like Lego with my kids, I can't just like free free form build. I just don't have that creative aspect.
mhm.
Like Minecraft, for example, like that's just I cannot do that. I can't play open world things. I don't have the creativity in me, and other people do, and I find it fascinating how they kind of harness that into this board gaming space. So yeah, by all means, share how that kind of came to be.
I totally get what you're saying because in this space now that I've been here for a few years, I look around, I look at all the games behind you and all these other games that we love to play, and I think, man, those people are creative.
Mm,
Man, where did they come up with that? Man, that mechanic is crazy. I just played Far Away for the first time.
mm,
It's a great mechanic. Like,
yeah,
I can't believe somebody hasn't kind of done that before. Maybe they have, and I just haven't run across it. But I thought, that's really cool.
yeah.
Like, that's super creative. And I don't consider myself one of those people. I can kind of find an idea, and then I really rely on the people around me to help me uh, focus it in.
Mm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So Flip Seven is a great example of that in progress. But that first game, I didn't know anything. I never designed a game, didn't know anything about the game. I didn't even know really the game industry was there. I mean, at
Yeah,
all. I just like everyone else, I go into a store and get the game and go play the game.
right.
But I reached out to Bananagrams. You could call it, how there's cold calls. It was like a cold email.
Yep.
I sent an email saying, hey, I got this idea for a game. I made it up with my family, just kind of like you guys did back in the day. And I know your family run, and I could use some advice.
Right.
And unbelievably, they reached back out to me. I've been able to chat with Rena Nathanson, and she is amazing. And she gave me a contact. That contact put me in touch with a manufacturing company called GPI. And that company, there was somebody working there, David Blanchard. He's now at USAopoly.
Mm, mm-hmm.
And they basically took my first game and then some subsequent games and acted as an agent. So I guess musicians have agents
Right.
and NFL players have agents. Well, I kind of had a game agent. It was
Hmm.
it's not how it's normally done, right?
Okay.
But
Right.
David took some of my ideas and he pitched them all over the place. And he got Glyphics landed within a month or two, which was
Wow.
amazing to me. I was like, whoa, this is great. And and we didn't land Flip. Back then it wasn't Flip 7, it was just Flip.
Okay.
And and one of my friends came to me and said, boy, you should start your own game company. Because basically what happened is I designed the first game, then the ideas started to come.
Mm,
And I'm sure you've heard that before from other folks. It kind of unlocked something. I'm like, oh, I've got more ideas for games. And a friend said, let's start our own company. And I said, great, let's start with Flip. It's solid. We've been playing it for a year. It's pretty much dialed in.
yeah.
And as soon as we decided to do that, that's when USAopoly reached out, of course, about Flip.
Mm.
So, short story to make it a little bit of a short story. We pivoted,
Hmm.
and I licensed Flip to US Appley, and that became Flip 7.
Yep.
And my partner and I switched over to Booty Dice, and that became my first self-published game.
Okay. And we're going to talk about that momentarily, but I want to dive into Flip 7 just a little bit. I love this game. I played this game with like 50 plus people since I got it in I guess last August or whatever.
Oh, that's awesome.
I played this. I've taught this with so many people. I got a second copy and I gave it to my kid's school because my son started like helping out with the game club. So I was like, you know what? Like he loves this. He did a little school project on the game and whatnot. Um, and just fantastic. I love it. It's just got so many like high moments in that regard, sorry. Um, but let's dive in. Did it always like what did Flip look like in the beginning? Was it always just numbers
Hmm.
1 through 12 and there was 1 1 up to 12 12s? Or like what did it look like and how did it like evolve and grow and change?
Flip 7 is a great example of, I guess, my process.
Hmm.
Um, and and my process is pretty exhaustive, which makes me wonder about some of these other games that I like. Like, man, they must have taken years to get it balanced because I take a long time,
Hmm.
and comparatively, my games, I guess, are what you would say they're pretty simple. That being said, even in a simple game, there's a difference between things that are really well balanced and things that aren't. And
Right.
these little tiny things, I think, can push a game from being a good game to a mediocre game, or a good game maybe to a great game,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
So this started with an idea that a friend of mine had back in high school, that something happened when you flipped a pair. That was it. That was the idea.
Okay.
And I got my son, and we got some cards, just regular decks of cards, like 8 decks of cards. And
Wow.
so, no, the very first game had an equal number of everything.
Okay.
And I tried to make it into a betting game, like Wits and Wagers or something,
Hmm.
and couldn't do it. Couldn't figure out a way to bet. So I thought something has to happen when you get a pair. Something that makes it so, you know, that it's worth maybe not doing it, right? And that's when we came up with the idea of, boy, if you flip a pair, that's it. You're done, right?
Hmm.
So that's how that happened. Couldn't bet on it. So if you get a pair, then you're done for the round. Okay. So that's starting point. Regular decks of cards, right?
Right.
And then my son and I started playing, and it's like, man, nobody cares about 1 point or 2 points or 3 points or 4 points. People want the big points, right? That's
Right.
exciting. Twos
Hmm.
and threes aren't exciting. So, I'm a math teacher, and I'm like, okay, it, I took it and split the deck into 3 sections. Like, 2 through 4, 2 through 5, and 6 through 10, and then the Jack, Queen, King, right?
Yeah.
And I did like 4 of these, 6 of these, 8 of these. So I was headed in the right direction, right? Let's do less of the little cards and more of the big cards,
Mm. Hmm.
and that started to work better, right?
Hmm. Yep.
And I don't actually remember the moment for this one, but it occurred to me I should just finish it out. I should just go all the way, right? Like 2 2s, 3 3s, 4 4s, 5 5s.
Right.
So I kind of came up with that on my own, and I came up with it because it works for this game in
Hmm.
particular. After the game came out, um, people started to compare it to some other games, and I realized other people have come up with this, which is not surprising when you think about it. It's really interesting from a game design perspective when you step back and you look at some games and why they have certain things that are similar. Part of you could say, oh, so and so took that from this, or so and so took that from this. And sometimes that's actually true. Sushi Go is derived from Seven Wonders, right? And
Hmm.
and that's fine. You take an idea, you like it, you work with it, and turn it into something else.
Yep.
Sometimes it's the way that it is because it's going to evolve that way just because it works better, right?
Hmm.
I'm not the first one to come up with an upside down deck.
Right.
It just wasn't my starting point. But for this game, you see how well it works, right?
Yep.
It just kind of works. From there, it kind of evolved how you might think it would. I wanted to put some fun cards in, and we tried lots of fun cards. We tried a wild. It's natural, right? Every card game has wild.
Yep.
For this game, the wild didn't work. And you've played it a whole bunch of times, and you could see you get the wild, you still have to call it something.
Right. Yep.
It's just not that exciting, right?
Yep. Then you got to
Uh,
remember what you called it, right?
you got to, yeah, and so that didn't work great. The freeze and flip three, those are the fun ones, right? I had them on the same card. It was a freeze or flip three,
Mm.
and when you played it on the other person, they had to choose which one they wanted.
Ah.
Now, then we get to the last step, which was when the op took it, what did they do with it,
Yep.
right? It was a very good game before the op took it. Um, they made one big, huge change that made it a lot easier to play, a lot better. They did little things like they split the freeze and the flip three. They split it into two different cards,
Yep.
right? They added beautiful artwork. I mean, amazing artwork, like so good.
Yep.
But the big change that they made was the way that we played it. You would have seven cards in front of you. I would have seven cards in front of me. Your wife would have seven cards in front of her, and we would say three, two, one, flip. Everyone would flip at the same time.
Mm.
Now, it's still pretty exciting, still works, still super fun, but it gets a lot harder to uh, do the fun cards. Like
Hmm.
you do a freeze and I do a flip three. How do we resolve it?
Right. Yep.
And the cool thing that the op came up with was, well, let's change that to deal one at a time. I mean, that's it, right?
Yep.
It's a simple thing, but it really changes a lot of things. It makes it so that you resolve immediately,
Yep.
right? It makes it so that you don't have as many cards out on the table, so that's nice too. I mean,
Mm.
it does a lot of things.
Yep.
Um, so I really like that change, and I was a little embarrassed because if you play many gambling games, those are both valid ways to play the game. You can deal all the cards out,
Hmm.
or you can deal around, right?
Yep.
And the thought of dealing around had actually occurred to me, and I didn't go with it
Mm.
um, because I thought it would be boring for the other players. So I was totally wrong, first of all.
Right. Yep.
And from a game design perspective, I learned a really valuable lesson,
Hmm.
which is you don't really know till you try it. You might
Mm.
think that you know, but I'm just the hugest fan of play testing.
Yeah.
And I should have just given it a try and,
Hmm.
seen and they did. And they're like, Eric, have you tried it this way? It's really good. I'm like, no, I thought about it. I didn't think it would work. People are gonna get bored. But like, not really. You want to give it a try. And I tried it with my friends and they loved it. And I'm like, this is great.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen you were at Gen Con and I've seen videos and you were like, you were the dealer and it's so easy to be like, hey, just one more, right? You're always telling, and when I'm playing it, I'm always like, hey, come on, you got to go one more. Got to go one more. And pretty much every time I play with anybody, if you have six, it's like, well, it's game seven in the Stanley Cup final. So you just have to go for it. And then
That's it.
you either have like yay or nay, you know what I mean? Like you have those polar opposite. But let's move now to booty dice and let's move a little bit to messy table games. So Flip 7 has come out, but that's kind of like the beginning of your journey into the publishing space. You started Messy Table Games, and your first big one, I shouldn't say big one, but your first design under
Mhm.
that brand would be Booty Dice. And from what I've seen on this, it draws a lot of similarities to like a Yahtzee mixed with a King of Tokyo. Am I right in that regard?
I think that's a great description. If you want to call it Pirate Yahtzee or a kind of a simplified King of Tokyo, I think that gets the point across to a lot of people. Um, and funny thing is, I wasn't thinking of Yahtzee or King of Tokyo, and I'm a huge King of Tokyo fan.
Mm,
I was trying to think of a game that I could do something different with dice that wasn't numbers.
mm,
And again, from that game design perspective, there's something magical about having six dice.
mm-hmm,
It's a good number to have, right? You can do a lot of things, but it's not too many.
yeah.
Anyway, the Booty Dice ended up being our first a self-published game. I do have a partner, and basically, it's very similar to King of Tokyo in that you have 6 dice and you get to roll them 3 times. At
Hmm.
the end of the third roll, you got to do whatever it says,
Yep.
right? So that part of it's the same. Another part that's the same is there's 2 ways to win, like King of Tokyo, which is nice. One way is you get the most gold, and the other way is that you're the last pirate left standing. Again, not derived from King of Tokyo. Maybe subconsciously it was, I don't know. But it just kind of works.
Hmm.
Where it differs a lot from King of Tokyo is that in King of Tokyo, if you're outside of Tokyo, you can only attack in,
Hmm.
pretty much. And if
Yep.
you're inside, you can only attack out. And that's a lot of the interaction is just kind of that street.
Right.
In Booty Dice, I designed it so that if you have 5 or 6 people or 4 people or whatever you have, I recommend at least 3 people. You're stealing gold and attacking anyone at the table.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've ever played King of Tokyo and somebody starts getting ahead in fame and you wish you could attack them, but you can't because
Yep.
you're not in Tokyo and they're not in Tokyo,
Right.
right? They're going to play it safe. They're going to sit out.
Yep.
In Booty Dice, everybody can attack anybody on their turn. Anybody can steal gold from anybody on their turn. So, it's piratey stuff. You steal gold, you walk the plank, you get shields, and you get gold, you steal gold,
Hmm.
and so it'd be very familiar to anybody that's played those games, I
Hmm.
think.
I will say this: I loved King of Tokyo. At the same time, the element of take that is something that I personally am not a big fan of.
Mm.
And I have younger kids, and so I'm curious for you. You have kids. How do you navigate that and navigate hard feelings in take that games? And as a designer, how do you like kind of mitigate that or design something that's fun for everyone, even if they're quote unquote getting picked on, right? Because I find that often can happen in take that games where you just start picking on the person that's winning, which naturally that makes sense. But sometimes it's not um picking on the person that's winning. Maybe it's just like ribbing each other and kind of poking the bear at times. But like how do you navigate that even as a dad?
That's a great question. My kids have grown up with me, so my kids my kids are okay. Um, and even back in the day when you'd play a game like Sorry,
Right.
and you'd be like, "Oh, that's it. Sorry,
Mhm.
you're going home," right? So there's
Yep.
always been those types of games. Um, it's been interesting to see the feedback coming in from families that are playing the game.
Okay.
Um, so I have a teacher friend that's got a kid that is he's he struggles with a lot of games,
Hmm.
and he absolutely struggles in a game where you have to, where somebody might attack you and knock you out of the game or that type of thing.
Yep.
Booty Dice is one of the only games that he'll play. It's like
Hmm.
his go-to game. I'm not, and I can't get into his head or some of the other people. But so far, we've had a lot of people say that it works great with their younger kids, that they love it. And so I'm kind of guessing because people aren't telling me why they love
Hmm.
it. So I'm going to throw out some ideas. One is because the game is so fast.
Mm.
So that if you lose the game in 15 or 20 minutes, you just play it again. It's not like Risk or Monopoly where you played it for 2 hours, then somebody booted you out of the game.
Mm.
So you're not that invested.
Right.
Um, but I think more than that, though, is that the turns come around and you see that you're not going to be attacked every time. And then you get to turn around and attack somebody else or steal their gold. And almost in a way, it's like people, like the kids are learning, like, oh, it's not just about me. People are just playing, like everyone's playing that way.
Right.
Like, oh, you know, that person has all the gold. Maybe I should take gold from them. Or this person has the most lives. Maybe I should attack them. Does it always work that way? No. Maybe somebody said something that ticked you off, and you're gonna attack them just cause, right?
Yeah.
So the other thing is maybe just because it's such a lightweight game, like it's not a kid's game. I have a lot of adult friends that play the game, just like we love King of Tokyo.
Yep.
But it's not meant to be mean
Mm,
spirited
yep.
in the overall scheme of it. But it's a good question. It's maybe not great for everybody, but I've always recommended people to give it a shot and
Hmm.
see what their kids think.
Hmm.
So we're about up to 200 reviews on Amazon, and um, so far, right? So
Yeah.
far, and like you said, your first big game. I mean, it's my first game. It's not some huge massive game, but it's doing really well.
Yep.
It's just been out a little over a year, and we're pretty happy with the reviews and how it's been received so far.
Hmm. So we only got a few minutes left here, but as a small publisher, as a small company, how do you just got into this recently? This is a very, very big hobby. It's
Mhm.
small, but it's big and it's hyper competitive. How do you see yourself kind of like setting yourself apart? How do you do that? Like, I don't want to say stay relevant because that's not the term I'm thinking of, but like how do you go ahead in this space?
Uh, that's a really perceptive question. So let me think about that for a second. I mean, first of all, you're trying to do what you're saying. That's our goal, right? That's
Hmm.
what we're hoping that we're going to be able to do.
Hmm.
So what do we talk about? What are some of our goals for ourselves, right?
Hmm.
One is to kind of create a recognizable brand. So Messy Table Games, um, that's my Instagram, that's my TikTok, which I don't have much of a TikTok presence. That's our website. We're Messy Table Games. So what type of games are going to be associated with
Hmm.
messy table games, right?
Yep.
So we're trying to create a brand and the games fit within that brand,
Hmm.
right? So, for example, I mean, a couple quick examples, games that you can learn in less than 5 minutes, that take, less than 30 minutes to play, that everybody can play, that are interactive.
Okay.
That's like our kind of our what we're going for,
Your
right?
model.
And um, one thing is to make sure that every game that comes out for us, some people throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. That's not our approach. Our approach is play it into the ground, play it for a year and a half, play it hundreds and hundreds of times, get all the feedback that you can. And then when you go to make the game, dial it in, don't skimp, make sure that when somebody gets a game, they're getting very, very high quality, like the best quality game that we can give them,
Mm.
right?
Yep.
And you said about staying relevant. That's really interesting. We just launched an axolotl game,
Hmm.
and we're one of the first people to launch an axolotl board game.
Right.
And axolotls are trending.
Yeah.
So part of it is, market awareness. I'm not the most market aware person. It wasn't my idea.
Hmm.
But I was looking for a theme for a game, and a friend said, "Look at trending animals," and you know, and we took advantage of that. The axolotls are trending really hard right now, but we've been this game's been in the works for over a year and a half, right? To
Mm.
get to this point where we could launch it, right? So, and I guess, networking and making relationships and doing what we're doing right now, and kind of
Hmm.
talking and meeting people in the industry, and, learning the little ins and outs and things like that. For my little company right now, we're doing things different than a lot of other publishers. Um, we're not really a presence right now at the big
Cons and
conventions,
yep.
but we spend a lot of time on our Amazon site and making sure that our pictures are good and our listing is good and the A plus content is good, and um, trying to control what we can control in
Hmm.
terms of putting our best foot forward.
Hmm.
I don't know if that totally answers your question. I
Yeah,
mean,
and I don't know if I was just curious because like it is like look how many games I have, and I have a very small collection of like maybe 100 games, right? But like you go to these big conventions and you go to like you hear Essen, it's like, oh, like 300 games being released at Essen alone. It's like, man, that must be intimidating for you as I wrap up here. Must be intimidating for you to be like, I'm gonna venture out into these troubled waters and let's see what kind of mark we can make, right?
So
And
Brent,
so
I didn't know, and so ignorance is bliss. I mean, I didn't know, and I've said this to a few other people, including my family. Had I known, like I try to tell my gaming friends, my Bacchus group, I'm
yep.
like, now that I'm on Instagram, now that I've gone to some conventions and I see how many games are out there, thousands and thousands and thousands of games, and a lot of them are really, really good and really creative and have amazing artwork and these cool mechanics. There's so many of them that it could be overwhelming
Mm-hmm.
and daunting, had I known,
Yeah.
you know. But two things. One is I didn't know when I started,
Mm-hmm.
so I didn't know. And the other thing is that my space that I'm in um, is less hobby, and I hate that. By the way, I'm going to just tell you right now. I know we're going to wrap up. I hate the mass market hobby distinction.
Mm.
And I get it, and I get it for simplicity. It goes in this box or it goes in this box, right? Here's the
Right.
mass market box, and here's the hobby box. I think that oversimplifies a lot of games. Like the train game or something that's so popular and so easy to. I call it the train game, but you know what I mean. To
Yep.
TTR. So,
TTVM.
um, for me, like maybe there's not as much competition in the mass market space. I don't know that that's true or not. But I see a lot of hobby stuff. People on Instagram, they have shelves like yours, and then they just keep going with all these big, huge games and stuff. And that's awesome, and I love a lot of those games. But that's not, as a designer,
Mm-hmm.
what I'm striving for
Yep.
right now. That being said, trying to make a dedicated card deck game, the space is packed.
Yeah.
It's packed. And Flip 7 is kind of surreal what's happening with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't expect that to happen. I'm excited that it's happening, but you can't count on, you don't count on something like that.
Mm-hmm. We got about 35 seconds here. So I'm going to try to wrap this up. This has been amazing. I've enjoyed this conversation immensely, and I hope that what you've said has inspired other designers. And so, Messy Table Games is your website. I'll post a link to that in the
Awesome.
description of this video. Thanks so much for taking the time, Eric. This is awesome. Flip 7, hopefully, big things come in the years to come with that. I'm excited to see Booty Dice and more games of what you come up with Messy Table Games. And so, thanks so much for taking the time.
Brent, I really appreciate you having me on, and really, really awesome questions, really thoughtful questions. So I really enjoyed it.
Right on. My name is Brent. Until next time, grab your umbrella. The forecast is cloudy with a chance of meeples.